Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscast, UN Security Council convening to address regional tensions, spotlight on Israeli settlements, and violence in Judea and Samaria sparking heated debate. Israeli ambassador responds. Meantime, Princess REEMA'S bold vision, Saudi Arabia's ambassador calling for groundbreaking peace initiatives in the Middle East. And later, archaeological discoveries in HAIFA unearthed 3,000-year-old dye factory, shedding light on sacred temple colors and empirical ambitions. The United Nations Security Council met to discuss tensions in our region, choosing to focus on Israeli settlement activity and violence in Judea and Samaria. Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan lashed out against somewhat one-sided criticism focused on Israel. ILTV's Steve Leibovich reports.
The United Nations Security Council can almost never be accused of even-handedness when it comes to Israel. This time was no different.
Israeli settlements constitute a flagrant violation of the UN resolution and international law. I call on the government of Israel to cease the advancement of all settlement activity immediately.
How come the entire world cannot stand up to the settlers and their sponsors?
The U.S. vowed to continue working with Israel and the Palestinian Authority to lower tensions, restore trust, and help create conditions for a return to talks.
Going forward, it is vital that both Israel and the Palestinian Authority take additional steps to de-escalate tensions. We call on all parties to refrain from unilateral actions, including settlement activity, evictions, and the demolition of Palestinian homes, terrorism and incitement to violence, all of which serve to only further inflame the situation.
Ambassador Gilad Erdan did not mince words when responding to the lopsided criticism of Israel.
Why do we hold these repetitive discussions if the root of the problem is constantly ignored? How can this council possibly aim to prevent violence if even the sick practice of rewarding terrorists isn't condemned or addressed? At each of these meetings, the focus is completely skewed instead of recognizing the truth, that Palestinian incitement and hate fuel the escalation of violence. Most of you prefer to blame Israel.
Ambassador Erdan urged the council members to condemn indiscriminate Palestinian violence against Israeli civilians. Will any Palestinian leader, anyone at all, condemn murder and terror? Of course not, said Erdan.
President Yitzhak Herzog called Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to convey his greetings on the occasion of the festive sacrifice, Eid al-Adha. After wishing Abbas, his family, his people, and all peoples of the region a happy holiday, Herzog stressed the need to act fiercely to thwart terror, which harms individuals, families, and communities, as well as a chance to live peacefully side by side in the region and the broader Middle East. The president also underlined his unequivocal denouncement of the recent assault on Palestinians by Jewish extremists. Israel needs to do more against vigilante violence in Judea and Samaria. That was the message from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in a phone call to Foreign Minister Eli Cohen. ILTV's Steve Leibovich has more.
Secretary of State Blinken said that he appreciates the strong messages Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Gallant made on the issue of Jewish vigilante violence in Judea and Samaria, but urged even stronger action. Blinken's call came after repeated attacks by Jewish extremists on Palestinian villages last weekend, in apparent revenge for recent deadly Palestinian terror attacks. The heads of the IDF, police, and Shin Bet called the incidents nationalist terror. Cohen told Blinken that the government of Israel fully condemns events in which citizens take the law into their own hands. Cohen also told Blinken that the escalation of violence in Judea and Samaria comes from proxies of the Iranian Ayatollah's regime, from Lebanon to Syria, via Iraq and Yemen, to Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. The two top diplomats discussed the possibility of Israel establishing diplomatic relations with more Arab and Muslim countries, and worked on setting a new date for the foreign ministers' meeting of the Negev Forum. The foreign ministers' meeting was set to take place in Morocco this year, but it's been postponed many times, in part because of the Israeli government's policy in Judea and Samaria.
And joining us now on the sharp criticism on Israel coming from different directions is former Israeli diplomat to the United States, Yoram Ettinger. Yoram, Israel is taking sharp criticism these days on its policies in Judea and Samaria. The U.S. and the UN Security Council are putting on pressure. Is their criticism fair or lopsided?
Well, this is back to routine, the way it has been since 1948, with presidents under the influence of State Department pressuring Israel. One should not ignore the fact that while that pressure goes on, the commercial and mostly defense cooperation between the U.S. and Israel has surged dramatically, even in recent days, as a result of the U.S. National security branches, intelligence, defense industry, aerospace industry, commercial high-tech, recognizing the very unique capabilities of Israel, which have contributed tremendously to the U.S., in fact, in excess of what is erroneously called U.S. foreign aid to Israel.
Yoram, and the Jewish vigilante violence is being widely condemned, including by the top security officials and most of the political leadership. Why can more not be done to rein in this problem, actually?
Well, the fact is that we're talking about a very, very minute, tinier than tiny minority among the Jews residing in Judea and Samaria. The number one element that is urging the law authorities in Israel to rein on those on this minority are the settlers themselves. However, we're talking about a tiny minority in Israel compared to the official voice of the Palestinian Authority, which means hate education, terrorism, and the best, most effective production line of terrorists conducted by Mahmoud Abbas, by the Palestinian Authority. To talk about those two phenomena in the same vein constitutes what I call a very obvious example of the immoral moral equivalence. In Israel, this is a tiny minority which walks against the grain. Terrorists among the Palestinians are heralded by the establishment, heralded by the school system, heralded by the Palestinians' religious system, and any moral equivalence uttered too often by the State Department or certainly by the UN constitutes tailwind to more and more terrorism on the part of the Palestinians.
We'll be right back to Abbas. Now, there was sharp criticism also of Israeli settlement policy. Ambassador Erdan was unapologetic, and he said that Jews have rights to live and build in Judea and Samaria. The U.S. is against us. Does Israel have any international support on this issue? Or is it, again, as you said, repeating itself back to routine?
Well, it's a routine, but I would say one of the lesser cases of the routine. You go back 75 years, the founding father, David Ben-Gurion, was heavily pressured by the American president, then Truman, the State Department, the CIA, the New York Times, Washington Post, to do away with Israel's control of certain areas in the Galilee, in the Negev, coastal plain, and to give up the whole of West Jerusalem. And he defied that pressure. The pressure which we experience today is a very, very weak replica of previous examples of American pressure. Each one of them was defied by Israeli prime ministers, and defiance of pressure caused short-term friction, but awarded Israel with long-term respect for its strategic resolve, and strategic respect is much, much more important than tenuous popularity.
Definitely is. Now, President Herzog, he called Palestinian President Abbas. After the holiday greeting, they pretty much discussed ways to lower the tensions in the area. Defense Minister Gallant yesterday, he met a top EA leader. Are these contacts significant?
Well, it seems to me that the most significant contact would be a determination by Israel, hopefully by the U.S., to end hate education conducted by Mahmoud Abbas, by the Palestinian Authority. Hate education is the most authentic reflection of the identity of the Palestinian leadership and certainly their vision and policy. Sadly, too many Israeli leaders and the entire establishment of foreign policy in Washington accords much more weight to diplomatic statements rather than hate education. Hate education is the Palestinian walk. Diplomatic statements is the Palestinian talk. The walk is much more significant than the talk. And until there is an end to hate education in the Palestinian Authority, there will not be an end to terrorism by the Palestinian Authority.
There's still a lot of work to do. Yoram, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.